welcome to Salt Lamp Gaming. I thought I'd take the opportunity today to kind of do a brief initial thoughts slash kind of semi-review video for the Fall of Saigon expansion for Fire in the Lake. So if you didn't see my unboxing video or you're not entirely sure what this is, basically Fire in the Lake is the Vietnam addition to the coin series. It covers basically the major years of US involvement in the base game from 64 to about 72. So Fall of Saigon came out in the last few weeks, and basically that extends the base game into up until 1975. The Fall of Saigon, or depending on which side of the political sphere you land on, it's either the Fall of Saigon or the Liberation of Saigon. So yeah, the base game, like I said, covers 64-72. With the expansion, there's a few ways to play now. You can either play just 73 to 75, which is the two-player variant, which uses the initiative track from Colonial Twilight, Brian Train's coin game, or one of Brian Train's coin games. So yeah, you can either do that, which is two-player, that's ARVN versus NVA, or you can do any number of extended scenarios. So I've just got, what you see here basically is post-US retreat, so post-Paris peace talks, using the full extended scenario, so that's 64 right the way up to 75. I'm at about, I guess, late 72, early 73 here, but you can also do a medium extended, which is from 68 to 75, or a short extended, which is from 72 up to 75. So yeah, like I said, what you're seeing here is basically like two cards after the final propaganda round of the base game. So I've got a few more 68 cards to get through, and then I'm into the Fall of Saigon deck. So just kind of overview, get a gist of what's happened in the game. I'm playing as the US and the ARVN. So as you can see down here, the NVA and the VC have got quite, not a particularly strong hold, but they have got a hold nonetheless on these southern regions here. So Kiangyang, Qianfeng, Bajuyan, and Tay Ninh as well, which is going to be a bit of a nightmare when they start infiltrating into here and start trying to push on Saigon. In Saigon, we've got quite a big ARVN presence. I've got a lot of police, a couple of troops and a base in there. But the VC, Viet Cong, did manage to get some guerrillas in there, and the NVA have one troop left in there, so I'm not too worried about that for now. Probably famous last words. I've got a decent position up here in Anlok. Phuc Long is VC controlled. I've got Kong control of Quang Duc, Long Khan, Binh Toi, Binh Tuan. You know, then the Central Highlands is kind of a bit contested right now. I've got Kian Hua under control. I've got all the cities apart from Kon Tum. Binh Din's looking alright. Pleiku is under VC control. Quang Tin, I did just do a spearhead and managed to get NBA control out of that region. Da Nang, Quang Nam, Quang Tri under control. Hui is a bit chaotic right now. So I'm on 59 support and available minus anti-war as the US after the retreat, which I'm pretty happy about. 44 coin control and patronage is the ARVN, so I'm going to have to focus a lot more of my attention on getting some more control and getting some patronage before everything starts collapsing, basically. The VC are at 53 points, opposition in bases, so they're in a pretty decent position. And post-Paris peace talks, the NVA are currently sitting at 8 NVA bases minus war weary, so they've got a decent foothold, and I think they're about to infiltrate quite heavily. So I just wanted to kind of give you a sense of what it will look like post-Paris if you do manage to retreat as the US. So what do I actually think of this expansion? You're about to find out. So having played the game now pretty much every way you can play it, I think I'm just about ready to give a brief overview, my initial thoughts, like I said, kind of semi-review of how I feel about this expansion. Is it worth the money? Is it necessary? You know, if the game's good enough on its own, do you really need this expansion? I'll cover that towards the end, but I'd like to just start off with my positives, my pros. So first of all, new mechanics, really cool. I really like the way the emphasis changes, the dynamic changes, because I feel like in the early years of the war, the US are the ones who are really getting stuck in my experience anyway, when I play solo. I like to really use the US's firepower while I can, and just try and beat the NVA back as much as possible, and kind of position my forces in such a way that once I have got comfortable with where the NVA are, I can start spreading out and kind of getting rid of any opposition on the board. So I really like this emphasis change post-Paris peace talks, where the ARVN are much more in the limelight here. They've got a big amount of troops on the board, got more special forces, more bases, and of course, a big new addition being the armor pieces, the tanks, the armored vehicles, whatever you want to call them. It really allows you as the ARVN to think about your maneuver a lot more, which is really cool. Also, as the ARVN, you know, you're typically just kind of positioning yourselves for coin control, trying to govern when you can. There's a lot less opportunity to do this now, so it's really important if you're playing the full extended scenario that you have a decent enough position going into the final years of the war. Otherwise, you're just going to get absolutely creamed. So, like I said, you've got this switch in dynamic between the US and the ARVN, where the US have really taken a step back, and what they can do is dictated by the US posture track, which is a really cool addition to the game. So basically, depending on where that's lying, it's going to dictate what you can do as the US. If you have no involvement in the war, you can basically just play events. And then depending on the number, it means, you know, how much you can airstrike, how many spaces you can train in or advise in. I like the fact that after you've withdrawn all your troops, you still have access as the US to your irregular, you know, your CIDG forces, your special forces kind of guys. And I like how the ARVN can also use them. So that's really cool straight away. Big fan of these new mechanics. I think they add a lot of flavour to the game. It really emphasises that transition from counterinsurgency to kind of full-on, full-scale, conventional, combined arms warfare. On top of that, the new pieces are really cool. I really like the armor pieces. What I like about coin games as well, you know, I love cool NATO symbols and nice chits with illustrations on them, but I think having these cubes, it kind of, I don't know, it just has this different kind of feel, this different kind of emphasis. It kind of detaches you a bit, which I think is necessary for what the game's trying to achieve. So I think they look really cool on the board. They're quite easy to discern between as well, which is really cool, which is, well, not cool, but yeah, handy. So that's nice. I like the fact that the NVA get them and the ARVN get them. And depending on which scenario you've played, the NVA can be particularly deadly with them. In this instance, they've played the PT-76 capability, so they're going to be even more potent in these next couple of rounds. Another thing, I think that this really nails the feeling of these years, where the US just kind of abandons the situation, kind of pretended it never happened. I think even more so in a 4-player game, you'd feel that sense of abandonment, but even playing solo as the US and the ARVN, you feel it, and you feel a bit dirty as the US player as well. Because basically, I think in the base game, one of my issues was, I felt, particularly in the first edition, I know they've rectified this a bit in the second edition, which the expansion also will kind of update the first edition slightly, because the player aids that come with the expansion are kind of more along the lines of the second edition, as well as the coup round. So I just kind of use those player aids now when I'm playing, and just kind of ignore the extended scenario stuff until I get to it. So yeah, I think this really punishes the US player, which I think is good, because I was finding I was winning quite easily, particularly on the 65 to 67 scenario, which I guess makes sense for those 2 years in particular. But I think the more you play the game, you start to see it in the cards, and as you approach the peace talks, you know, you've got this anti-war sentiment being tracked now, which is really cool. I think it really models well the kind of feeling on the US home front of the conflict, and it really changes the way you play as the US too in the extended scenario, because I found anyway in this game, having played a few of these extended scenarios now, basically the longer the US stays involved, the more it punishes the US player as the coup cards come out. It makes it a lot harder for the NVA and the VC, because the ARVN aren't completely swamped by those two factions. You know, it buys you a bit of time, and especially it can be really handy to keep Saigon under coin control. But I found now, I wanted to position myself in such a way that I could retreat straight away. But basically, if you've got over 32 points in the Paris Peace Talks, you're forced to stay at war. So it really emphasizes a different method of play. You know, you can spend your formative years in the war really engaging the enemy and getting stuck in. But then you find as you approach the last couple of years, you really start pulling back. You know, you're really weary of withdrawing forces. You want to keep your points at a certain level so you can actually withdraw. Because post Peace Talks in this game, you know, I'm currently sitting on 59 points of support and availability minus anti-war, which I think is really good. But playing two-player solo, it's only going to count as basically your score's only going to count for the lowest of the factions you're playing as. So that's cool, really, really cool. I like the fact that it's now a lot harder for the US player, and I think I was actually playing, just as a side note, I was playing solo just as the US, and I found I was getting a bit frustrated because the ARVN were just constantly going in for patronage. So I think it's a lot more interesting playing both factions. You're trying to balance these play styles, and especially as you come up towards the Paris Peace Talks, you know, you want to have a good US score, and then you completely switch your focus to the ARVN side of things. Let me see. Sorry, I've got all my notes here. Another thing I think this nailed is just the complete total chaos that these couple of years was. You know, you start off quite confidently as the ARVN, as the first batch of cards are quite positive to you. You know, you've got the last couple of chances to get as much aid in as possible, kind of bump up your patronage, get forces on the board quite quickly, and then the second sets of cards just, you know, by the end of the game, I find I've just got so many casualties and so little money that it's so hard to balance what you need to do. It's a real puzzle, which I like a lot, because I think if a game's too easy, then I'm not gonna play it. So, you know, it starts to feel really chaotic, really sweaty as you've got such few pieces on the board and you're just trying to use them to the best of your capabilities. It's nice you've got these extra rangers now, and they can actually take part in regular conflict as you're just doing these kind of desperate, you know, like special forces raids, missions and things like that, and it really does. Obviously I wasn't there, but in my head it feels like that just complete chaos, US just abandoning you. You know, you've got no foreign aid coming in, you're on your own basically. And as the cards come up, you really start to feel like that. And depending on where the NVA are, they can build up extremely quickly, and depending on what cards they have, they can boost their forces on the board massively. I should note, again, I think I have said this, but I am playing solo. This is only a solo kind of perspective review, because I haven't played this with other people yet. But I noticed going through the rulebook, one of the really cool things is each faction can actually select a couple of cards that come up in the deck. And obviously you shuffle them on top of that then, so they can end up really helping you or really hindering you, which is awesome. Particularly in the two-player game, it feels incredibly sweaty, incredibly chaotic as you're coming up to those final couple of cards. And if the NVA have played their cards right, then they can basically do their pivotal event at any moment, right up until the last propaganda card. So I found that in a couple of games I've played. I've been in a decent position and the NVA play that card and it's just over. So I'm still kind of figuring out how to best play this scenario, which is awesome, because, you know, again, it's adding, which is a further point of my pros, it's just adding so much replayability to a game which already had an insane amount of replayability. I will say, I feel like every time I play this game now, I think I'd have to use this expansion, basically. I'd have to, like, I just think it adds so much to the game. I think it would be, unless I'm doing one of the shorter scenarios, just focusing on like a specific era of the war, then I wouldn't use it. But I think my favourite way to play this, I do really enjoy the two-player variant, but my favourite way to play this is literally do the whole thing, 64 onwards. And it really builds this awesome kind of narrative, this alternate history timeline which I think is really cool that GMT included these scenarios, because it really does let you explore, you know, what would happen if the US stayed till 75, with the way politics were on the home front. You know, what would happen if the ARVN didn't get the chance to pull their Vietnamization, you know, just pulling US out and putting more ARVN in, you know, could the VC win? If they managed to rebuild after the Tet Offensive, you know, if the VC have enough of a presence on the board, can the NVA even win? So I think that's really cool to explore, and I'm really looking forward to, once I've done a few more playthroughs as US ARVN, which is my preferred way to play so far, I'm going to start playing as the VC in the NVA. So again, so much replayability, on top of an insane amount of replayability anyway. Let's see here. Yeah, you know, I've said about, you know, chaos, you kind of feel betrayed by the US. It changes the way you play, just adds so much variety. It just feels like this apocalypse basically just decimated the countryside. Everything you've been fighting for is just falling away. You know, you don't even know what you're fighting for anymore. Is the ARVN? In reality, in this situation, it's just mass exodus from the land. Like, everyone you were fighting to protect is just gone. You know, how can you get the support of a population that just isn't there? So amazing, really cool, modelled insanely well. I also think as well, a benefit to this, I like a long game. This has taken me about 8 hours in total, and I'm not even finished yet. But the 2-player game on the extended 72 to 75 scenario play extremely quickly, like really, really quickly, because there's only about 28 cards, and when you've only got 2 players and you're just constant back and forth, vying for initiative, jockeying for initiative, it does fly by, which, you know, it is a pro, because if you don't have the time to do this, you know, I'd love to sit down. I've got like 2 or 3 hours. I can do the Black April scenario. If I have a bit more time, I can do the extended scenario. So it's just so many ways to play this, which is awesome. I think I've covered just about all my pros. I think the cards are really cool as well. Just quickly, because you're only using 8 cards, I think every year has. Should have checked this beforehand. 26 cards for each year. Plus you're playing solo, you're just shuffling 8 cards at a time. It's going to be a lot of variety. You're not going to get the same cards twice. I've played this about 4 times with the Fall of Saigon cards now. I don't even think I've seen them all. The solo system is really good. I had some mild confusion, but that was cleared up very quickly on Board Game Geek forums, thanks to Jason Carr, so that plays really well. I would recommend, if you have the base game, probably get the Trung solo expansion, because you'll just be a lot more used to the Tason cards, because it's pretty much the same thing. But obviously the emphasis changes on what the factions want to do. So sorry, just quickly again, that's another really cool thing. It's not just the way you play, but the way the bots play on top of that. You know, they'll have their set priorities throughout the base game, and then as soon as you play that last coup card, their priorities are just going to change completely. I also really like as well how you don't just immediately get rid of the last base game cards you have. You do play those out before you fully transition to the Tason cards. There are a few cons I have with this, not many. I feel like I have to have some because I'm British, and that's what British people do best, is complain. So, like I said, there are very, very, very few cons. But I think that the designer's notes could have been a bit more expansive. They could have put a bit more in, maybe a couple more pages. I know they're busy guys and stuff, and if you want to research the history, that's on you. You know, they've given some recommendations of books. There's a big reading list. You know, all the cards, descriptions are laid out really nicely, but the actual designer notes themselves, I think, could have just been slightly more in depth. Just a few more paragraphs, if anything. But you know, that's not really a big con, is it? And the other thing is the victory conditions. Not the victory conditions themselves, they make sense, but how you're actually supposed to implement them with the base game. Because in the base game and the solo game, they give like a nice description afterwards of kind of what that means for Vietnam, what that means for you as the player. Is it stalemate? Have you won outright? Has the other faction won outright? Whereas this one, I find it a bit confusing. If there's a draw, you don't really know, like, did the NBA win? You know, Saigon's fallen, but they don't have enough points to win outright. So it's kind of like this weird stalemate. So I think that could have been expanded on a little bit, but just use your imagination, basically. I think in that instance I kind of decided the Civil War just kind of faded out, basically just kind of, the country is just in turmoil, and it's just kind of like tribal warfare. So yeah, those are basically my only cons, and I think if those are my only cons, then it's a good expansion, which leads me on to say, basically, should you get this? I think so. If you buy Fire in the Lake, don't get it immediately, just play it a couple of times, understand what the game is, what it's trying to do, the mechanics of the game. But if you've played Fall in the Lake, if you play Fall in the Lake regularly, I think this is a must-have, basically. I think it's an absolute must-have. It's kind of crazy to me how much this has added to the game. How much, you know, it still uses the same board and a lot of the same pieces, but just by adding a few pieces, adding new cards, some new capabilities, and just the different kind of emphasis on the bot, it just gives you this awesome feeling as you're coming up towards the Paris Peace Talks that you know the emphasis is about to completely change. You know, you're in the last kind of couple of cards of the base game, and then the tanks get added, your extra rangers come in, the extra base come in, the US maybe is just completely gone. So yeah, I just think it adds a lot, basically, and it's kind of crazy to me what some new cards and some new pieces can do to an already incredibly versatile system. I hope they start to bring out a few more expansions for some other coin games. I know they're bringing out as well Sovereign of Discord expansion, which I'm really excited for, which is going to cover those early years and let you play out the entire thing, which is going to be awesome. So I can't wait for that. I don't know when that's going to come out. I imagine probably not this year, but we'll see. I think this is in the works for about 3 years, so I hope it'll come out before I'm 30. Got about 4 years left. Fingers crossed. Please GMT. But yeah, I don't know what else to add really. I guess I'd like to ask you guys, you know, if you were to make an expansion for any coin game, what would you do? I think for me, what I'd love to see is either for Distant Plane, I'd love to see the kind of initial landings with the Green Berets, and you know, you kind of like trying to win over the Northern Alliance and things like that. I think that could work really well. So Brian, Train, if you see this, hit me up. Maybe we can work on that together. But yeah, what do you guys think? Have you played this? Do you like it? If you were going to make an expansion for any coin game, what would you do? Basically, yeah. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope this has kind of maybe informed your decision a little bit. If you've been thinking about picking up the expansion, if you're not sure what it is, like I said, I highly recommend it. Yeah, thank you very much, guys. See you in the next one.